We are beginning today with Psalm 30. Again, an exhortation from the psalmist to the Lord. I will extol thee, O Lord, for thou hast lifted me up and hast not made my foes to rejoice over me. Again, as we've seen, there seems to be a recurrent theme going back and forth from all these songs, but yet each one is different in its own right. And that's where we're supposed to seek it out. Many times we in Christianity are not trained in poetry. We read everything from A to B, or what can I get out of it? What can I apply from it? The poems, especially the Psalms, are just meant to be felt. They're just meant to be enjoyed for what they are, to feel their depth and their mood. They're almost like listening to a beautiful piece of music, like a sonata, to where you're not supposed to just understand where the melody goes up and down and its cadences and its structure, but just to feel. And just here we are, we're to take a minute of our lives and feel what the psalmist is feeling. He is rejoicing, you've made my foes to rejoice over me, that you have not made them to rejoice over me. O Lord my God, I cried unto you, and thou hast healed me. The excitement, the anticipation of God being with you. O God, O Lord, thou hast brought me up, my soul from death, and hast kept me alive, that I should not go down to the pit, which he's talking about, unto death. Sing unto the Lord, O ye saints, and give thanks in remembrance of his holy name. Again, the excitement that we're to feel here. For his anger endureth for a moment, in his favor is life. Weeping may come in the night, but joy comes in the morning. We've heard that one several times. It's quoted again and again. In verse 10, O Lord, have mercy upon me. Be thou my helper. Once again, the psalmist is including us into a heart's cry. Many religions do not have their God on their side. They're there just to make their God happy. And if they make their God happy, then maybe their God will send them good crops or, more prosperity. But just to say that you are my helper, you are my help. You have turned my mourning into dancing. Thou hast put off my sackcloth and girded me with gladness, to the end that my glory may sing praises unto thee and not be silent. O Lord my God, I give thanks unto thee forever. This is a psalm that could have been sang during a time like the bringing in of the Ark of the Covenant, when he danced before the people. Here it is, it's a bit of a dancing psalm. So we need to just feel what the psalm is leading us to, not just in an understanding of our mind, but at a feeling and with emotives. You've turned my mourning into dancing. There's a beautiful imagery right there. Who turns your mourning to dancing? Who has the ability to do that? And if God has that ability, then you need to turn to him. I think these are very powerful. I think they can be emotive. They can be expressive. They can take you up. They can ground you. I don't think any of them, I've never read a depressing psalm in here. They start out that way, but usually it's about my condition. But by the time it gets to the Lord, it's all exaltation. Going back to Exodus. Here we are in Exodus 9 and 10 today. And we're right in the middle of the plagues. And we began with the plagues beginning with the water turning to blood. We had a plague of frogs. We've seen lice. They've had done flies. Today, he goes in to kill the cattle. And when he says cattle, it's not just cows and steers, but he's also talking about lambs. He's talking about oxen. He's talking about donkeys. He's talking about horses. So the idea is that he's going to have this murrain, this death of the cattle come along, but he's going to not destroy the cattle of the Israelites. Once again, he's separating Goshen from the rest of Egypt and seeing things happen in all of Egypt consistently, but not happening where the Jews are. Well, where the Israelites are. They haven't been called Jews yet. They aren't called Jews until we get to the Babylonian captivity. But the idea that here he is. So all of this is going to fall upon us again, upon the horses and asses, and upon the camels and oxen, and upon the sheep. This is decimating, if you will. This is decimating Egypt. First, it's been hurting the bodies. First, it's been the darkness, which creates, though darkness is coming in later. The water turns to blood, the frogs. strong inconveniences, but now we're getting more serious. We're ratcheting it up. And now we're going to the destroying of economics, the destroying of your ability to grow and maintain crops, which later on, unfortunately, a plague of hail will come and destroy your crops. And remember, this was all happening in Egypt at the time of harvest. You're going to need your slaves. You're going to need your oxen. You're going to need your mules. You're going to need all these things, and yet they're being wiped out because of the hardness of heart. And each time the Pharaoh says, behold, there is none of the cattle of the Israelites are dead, and the heart of Pharaoh was hardened. And the Lord did this thing on the morrow, and all the cattle of Egypt died. Then the Lord spoke, and they would have boils, and these boils would go on man and on beast, the beast that survived. And they took the ashes of the furnace, and Moses sprinkled it towards heaven, and boils broke out on man and beast, and the magicians couldn't stand before Moses because of the boils. And this is extremely painful, blisters all over their body. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he hearkened not unto them. Once again, we're seeing hardening going back and forth. God is going to show himself, like he says in 10:1, when I get to it in a moment. The Lord says to Moses, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I might show these my signs before him, that thou mayest tell in the ears of thy sons and thy sons' sons, and down through the generations to today, what things I have wrought in Egypt, and the signs which I have done unto them, that they may know that I am the Lord. The goal of these plagues is to show that the Lord is God. And many of times, here we are 3,000 years later from this, and we're still struggling with who is the Lord, who is God, who is controller. He's trying to make this statement once, very dramatically, emphatically, with his hands in the process, so that we might see once and for all. And are we learning the lesson as a planet? Are we learning the lesson as a people? The next plague he sends is with fire and hail. He sends hailstones and fire that's falling down on the crops. He tells the Israelites and everyone to bring what little cattle they have. You get the idea that not all the cattle died, but many of them died, and that was on the field and upon the horses. You get the idea that he didn't wipe out every cow, every horse, but he wiped out those that were out in the field. He wiped out those that couldn't be brought in. He wiped out those. So here he is. He's telling them that I will stretch my hand forth, and I will smite thee and thy people with pestilence, and they shall be cut off. I will show my power. Behold, tomorrow I will send a rain of grievous hail that has not been in Egypt since the foundation, even to now. And this hail is a mixture of hail and fire. And the Lord told Moses, stretch forth your hand to heaven, and I'll send hail upon the land, Egypt, and upon man, upon beast, and herb of the field. And he stretched forth, and the Lord thundered hail, and fire ran from the ground, and the Lord rained hail upon the land. You get the idea of these are like forms of meteorites coming in, hitting the ground, going along, killing what it can, destroying all the greens, destroying it. You find out that this hail destroys the wheat. I mean, it destroys the barley, but it didn't destroy the wheat. It says over here that the flax and the barley were smitten, but the barley was the ear, and the flax was boiled. But the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they hadn't grown up. So again, you're at a specific time in the harvest to where it was time to do the flax and the barley, but it wasn't time to do the wheat and the rye. And Moses went out of the city and spread upon his hands, and the thunders and hail ceased, and the rain was not produced. So he stops this. It's interesting. It just didn't stop on its own. These things didn't start or stop on their own. They started and stopped at the bequest of Moses from Yahweh. So the Egyptians couldn't say it was just randomness. No, it started when I said it was going to start, and it stopped when I stopped it. And Pharaoh saw the rain and the hail and the thunder had ceased. He sinned them yet more and hardened his heart. We get an idea of him hardening his heart here. Remember, when you look on here, you're going to see him harden his heart. You'll see the Lord harden his heart. The whole goal, like he says in 10:1 and 2, is that we might know, that we as nations might know. If we would just stop and learn the lesson of Egypt. Sometimes a person wants to do one specific showing of their power just once. Just once. And this is not God showing all of his power. We'll see that in Revelation when he comes on full bore against the entire planet. He's not showing all of his power. He's flexing some muscle just to show, once and for all, I'm going to set up this to show you who I am and that I'm worthy of your praise and honor. That through strength. Remember that Egypt and Canaan and many of these lands were worshiping false gods. They were sacrificing the false gods. They all had all kinds of horrible practices for these gods. And God has always wanted to release man from the bondage of foreign false gods and into the light of where they're supposed to be under him. In verse 10, he begins with this preface of telling why all of this has happened. And Moses and Aaron go up to the Pharaoh again. How long will you refuse to humble yourself? There's one that we Christians should understand. How long before we humble ourselves before God? How long before men humble themselves? So the Pharaoh and the servants, even the servants are saying, how long will this man be a snare to us? Let these people go. And Moses was saying that we're going to take everyone, our young and our old, and our flocks and our herds. We will go and we will hold a feast unto the Lord. Let the people go. Let the Lord be with you. As I let you go, your little ones, look to it, for evil is before you. and the Lord said, stretch forth your hand on the land of Egypt, and he sent locusts. Again, locusts would go out and eat what the hail hadn't destroyed. And it's interesting how he ratchets it up. First we have the really strong inconvenience of doing without water. Then we have the strong inconvenience of having lice and flies. Then he ups the game to the destruction of the cattle. And then he ups the game to boils of actually it happening on their bodies. Then he brings to fire. I got ahead of myself. First he kills the cattle, then he brings in the boils. Now he brings it up to fire. He's destroying the flax. They're not going to repent, so he's upping it even more. And you'll see he'll ratchet this up till he gets to the death of the firstborn. Then it's done. When we look at God, he stopped at the death of the firstborn, and his firstborn is Christ. And that's the symbolism here. But we see him taking this up. He ratchets it up to the locusts, and locusts come in and destroy whatever green was left over. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's hearts, and he wouldn't let the children of Israel go. Next one was darkness. And the darkness that came in was not just turning off the lights, but it was like being in a dark cave. It was like you couldn't find the light. You couldn't light light. I don't understand, but I'm getting the idea here that they couldn't even make light, that for 3 days they were just in utter darkness. If you've ever been in a cave, or if you've ever been outside and all of a sudden the lights go out, or in a room and it's completely like it's a sealed room and you're completely dark. The fear, the terror, the foreboding, the word just pulls in on you. You got the idea that this is a dark that no light could be seen in. It was a supernatural darkness. And he put this over. He put it over the people for 3 days. And Pharaoh says, go you serve the Lord, only let your flocks and herds stay here. So Pharaoh's starting to negotiate a little bit. The world always wants to negotiate with the godness of God. You know, they always want to say, well, if you'll meet me halfway, or I'll offer you this, you give me that, and God doesn't allow that. And so he finishes with this. And it's in that's chapter 9, and finishing 10, we finish with darkness. Tomorrow we go into the last plague, and then he just starts talking about the Passover in preparation. Again, you'll see God is in the midst of this, that he prepares the people. He goes through all of these different plagues, and we'll see the death of the firstborn, it's on its way. So, and he prepares people. So he's going to prepare them for the journey out. It's not just, okay, everybody, let's go. But there's certain preparations, and there's certain things he wants to instill so that these people will never forget this. This is a lesson God is seeming through the Exodus to really hone in on, so he doesn't have to do this again. So we get the idea that this is a big one, that I'd rather not do this again. Just like the flood. I don't want to flood the world again. So I'm going to give you a rainbow. I don't want to do another group of plagues together in conjunction to show you my might. Because if you'd spread these over months and years and stuff, like maybe had been happening, people don't see that it's God. It's just randomness. Or it's about, it's not God trying to get their attention. Here we have history to where we can go and see what God has done here. So we finish with darkness, and then comes the death of the firstborn, and then comes Exodus, and then comes, of course, the Red Sea, then comes the law. So you can almost see a progression. Christianity has the same thing. We begin in darkness. Then comes the death of the firstborn. Then it's leaving Exodus, the place of sin in our lives, going through the Red Sea, which is his blood symbolized by baptism. Then, of course, the wilderness journey of learning what is Christianity, how do we live our lives here, and, of course, the city of God, which is to come, which is heaven, which is being with Christ. So you see these things lining up, and we can see the parallels in our life. So tomorrow, the last plague, death of the firstborn, then we're going to discuss in depth the Passover and the feast. And then it's away we go. Bye.